Hi, I'm Eric Christopher, president of WSC Realty Advisors and WSC Property Management here in Long Beach. I've been an apartment broker, property manager, and owner for 15 years now, and this is part of our property management series. This is part two of a video we did a couple weeks back about renting your apartment units quickly and more efficiently, and this dovetails into that. Now, if you didn't see that first video, I put the link in the email that I sent you to get to this one. So you should be able to find it pretty easy. If not, give me a phone call or a email and I can definitely get it in your hands very easily. So let's say that we're now in a place where we've got our marketing out. People are starting to begin to call us. Let's start with just the initial phone call. You know, probably like a lot of you, I do a bit of screening over the phone. What's the credit like generally? People usually know their FICO score, and if they don't, if they're vague about it, I'm going to assume their credit's probably not that great. How many adults are moving in the unit? What's the rough income of the adults? Really what I'm trying to do is just size up who I'm dealing with. And if they have something of those questions I ask them that's out of whack, I'm going to hint that I may be able to do something. The owner may decide to choose them to rent if they provide a double deposit. And if that isn't agreeable to them, probably the conversation can end right there. So one thing that we'll start with is the precedence that you set with these people when you meet them for the first time, talk with them. They're going to make a mental note, whether conscious or unconscious, about how you handle their business. If you're professional in every aspect, the meeting, you're on time, any paperwork you're giving them is concise, you're setting a precedence on how these people will behave if and when they become a tenant. So now you've got people coming to actually physically look at the unit. And naturally, at the end of that tour, the best thing is when they ask for a rental application. Now, one thing I want to point out is kind of a little bit of a sidebar is when you're handing them a rental application, I want you to have a rental criteria sheet attached to it. And I can give you the sample that I use. I highly suggest that you attach those to any rental application you get. And here's why. In this kind of litigious society we live in and claims of discrimination and all this stuff are swirling all around us, the last thing you want is to deny somebody the ability to rent your unit and have them come back and file a complaint against you for discrimination. And that's easily rectified if you have a sheet with the criteria on it. The easy answer is, hey, they didn't meet the criteria. And that'll usually put an end to it right there. So make sure you do that and contact me if you don't have one. I'll give you my copy. So now you're getting an application or two. Now what do we do? Well, the apartment associations, in your experience, I'm sure you've got a checklist, or the apartment associations do. But what we're going to do here today is go a couple different directions that may not be on those checklists that the associations give you. And I thought about this today a little bit philosophically. Screening and selection of tenants is pure risk mitigation. That's all we're really doing, right? If everybody was going to pay their rent and not destroy your unit, this would be a very easy process, but it's not always that way. So what we're doing with this process is trying to mitigate risk. And past the checklist items that the associations have, I've got a few items to help you do that. And as they say, the devil is always in the details, and nothing could be more true here. First thing starts when they hand me that application. They kick their $50 in for the screening and credit check fee. The application, is it clear and complete? Because we've all seen those applications. It looked like the person was drunk when they did it. It's just looks like a child wrote the thing out. And I'm starting to begin to think that when I see that this tenant's sloppy and maybe a little bit of careless kind of tenant. And so that's a bit of a red flag that I start with there. Secondly, references. I know we all get them. How many times do you actually check them? And I got bit by this years ago on my own building when I first bought it. I kind of cut a corner. Now, not a chance. I contact all the landlord references, and I want to get at least 2, and also employment references. Starting with the landlord references, I look up the current property where the person lives. I find out who the owner of that property is, and if that's not the landlord that they have on their application, I will call that owner, just kind of explain to them what's going on. Your old tenant's applying here for a new unit. Is your manager at the property so-and-so? And most of the time it is. Most of the tenants aren't going to lie, but I found that some of them do. And I found that they put their brother or their friend down as their landlord reference because they're on bad terms with the real landlord, and they're going to try to get a little bamboozle going with me. And I found a few people that are doing that right away. That's an application that's in the trash. Sometimes when you have a larger management company, their willingness to give you any information might be limited. I try to get to somebody who I can kind of, quietly just say, hey, I'm just trying to look to make a good decision here. If you were receiving their application, would you rent to them again? And you can, just try to maybe put some answers together from that. And I don't mind going back the second or third landlord if they have it. Sometimes they may be just moving away from home if they're younger or whatever, and may be limited on that. But if there's more landlords there, I'm going to call them all. And then the next thing I do is I take a drive over to where they currently live, if it's feasible. I want to drive over there maybe in the evening or on the weekends and just kind of see what it looks like. Is it messy? Is there stuff everywhere? Are there kind of undesirable people hanging around? Is there beer cans all over the lawn? I'm going to use that as part of my decision, because what they're doing now is likely going to bleed over to what they do with me. For employment references, it can be easy or hard depending. I found also with larger corporations that they don't really want to give you any information. They're afraid of the liability, and they'll verify maybe the dates of employment. They may or may not even verify the income. So what I do in that scenario is I kick it back to the tenant and tell them I need to speak with their supervisor, and that they need to tell them that they can speak with me candidly. So that way I can get to their supervisor, verify the information, and also add in a question or two about, hey, would you rent to this person if you were a landlord? You are looking or listening for any kind of subtle hint, whether that be a little chuckle or somebody saying, well, I don't know. You're listening for that subtlety, because that may be the answer. And I'm glad to call back 2 or 3 employers back, 2 or 3 landlords back. Any information I can get to mitigate the risk, I really want to do that. With credit, we saw back in 2009, 10 through say 2012, it seemed like everybody's credit was bad. And I got a feeling that after this COVID thing's over, we're going to see some tougher credit again. So how do we get around that? I've always kind of used credit as one part of the equation. And obviously we'd rather have better credit than less, but I found in 2009 through 12 that I still have very good tenants that I brought in back then that had bad credit at the time, and they're still with me and were never a problem. So what I do with that, I'm sure a lot of you do this, is ask for a double deposit. If they can't afford the double deposit and they have bad credit, that's probably a little bit too nasty for me to want to take part in. But most of the time, if they have bad credit, they do know it. And if they have a double deposit, they can maybe be in a position where if you tell them, look, if you make prompt rent payments for 6 or 9 or 12 months, we can credit that second half of the deposit back to you. And most of the time, if the people have the money, which I really would want if the credit was in a bad way, I've moved a lot of people in like that, and knock on wood, it's not gone wrong for me once doing that. And lastly, say you've now selected a tenant and all is good. You've got the paperwork all filled out. You're getting their certified funds for the deposit and first month's rent. What I found a lot when I take over files from bigger management companies or from private owners is the most important thing to start with is that move-in inspection. I'm very meticulous. I want every line item filled out. I walk through the unit with them. I ask them, hey, if there's anything that you don't agree with here, or you think is a discrepancy, let's handle it now. I want to have an ironclad move-in inspection so that down the road, when they move out, that we have documentation on the deposit. If you're self-managing and you just have trouble keeping up with a process like this to get a good new tenant in there, our process is very thorough, and our days of vacancy is kept at a very low rate. And our retention and tenant performance is also very strong. I've had a very low eviction rate. I don't want to say it's all me. I mean, there's all risk out there, but adding some of these items in can help you in the long run. And if you'd like your self-managing, I can do this leasing aspect for you. If you want to keep doing the rest, please give me a call to talk about it, and we'll talk to you on the next video.